Good night. Here at one till tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma Gerald Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word out tonight. The topic gonna be the snare has been broken, and you know that's the Israelite. Um, God deliver us from those who seek to destroy us. God is on the side of those who seek Him. Now this story is about the Israelite. They finally acknowledged that God had saved them. Because you remember during their trials, God had to keep on reminding them, it's me that had escaped y'all, saved y'all from being slaves. It's me that was feeding y'all. It's me, that took care of y'all through the wilderness. So God had to keep on reminding them it was Him. But now, finally, the Israelite acknowledged that God had saved them. So when the enemy attacked them, you know, if it had been for, for God on our side, the enemy would have swallowed them up alive. And they're talking about the Egyptians, so they have escaped like a bird. The snare had been broken. So this story gonna be coming from Psalms 124 verse 1 through 8. you know, um, 1 and 2 pretty much is the same. If the law had not been on our side, you know, the Israel is thanking God for the help only He can bring. If the law had not been on our side, when our enemies attack us, Israel are still thanking God. So 3, they would have swallowed us up alive when their anger had flowed against us. Exodus 14, 13, and 14. Chapter 14, 13, and 14. The Israel is talking about when they thought they was gonna die in that desert. When the Egyptian came after them, if it wasn't for God that saved us, they would have swallowed them up alive. So we're gonna look at Exodus 14:28. The Egyptian came after Israel, but God had swept them into the sea. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelite, into the sea. Not one of them survived. So they want to go. They want to go against the Israelite. Knowing as God people, God chosen them. So they follow the Israelite, but God has swept into the Red Sea. Not one of them survived. Not one of them survived. You know, but God swept them into the sea. The entire army of Pharaoh had followed them, were under the Red Sea. Not one of them survived. Not one of them survived. So Pharaoh's anger had flowed against Israel when he realized he let them go. Because God had hearts in his heart. So then when God hearts in his heart, he realized he didn't let the Israelite go. Then he started being angry and everything else, and that's when he started going after the Israelite. So forth. The flood would have engulfed us. The torment would have swept over us. You know, so they're saying if the table had turned, the flood, the Red Sea would have engulfed the Israelite. They wouldn't have been under. They would have been under the Red Sea if it wasn't. If they would have had swept over them, like the Egyptian was swept under the Red Sea. So they're saying if the table had turned, that would have been them under that Red Sea. That would have been them. The water had covered them up. So that's why they're thanking God. They're thanking God because it won't be for God that was on their side. And that the same thing was, it won't be for God on our side. The enemy would have tore us up into pieces. So we always got to thank God. I always start out with my prayer just thanking God. When I don't have nothing else to say but thank you, God. So now the Israelites is thanking God. They said if the table had turned, It would have been them under that Red Sea. The water would have covered them up, you know. But since they had God on their side, the Egyptians, the whole army, they all were under that Red Sea. Not one of them survived. So five, the regular water would have swept them away. So the flood of the Red Sea would have swept them away if the table turned. If they wouldn't have had God, that's what they said. They had God on their side. If they wouldn't have had God on their side, that Red Sea would have covered them up. The flood would have engulfed them. The flood would have just swept them away. If it hadn't been for God on their side, if it had been for God on our side, you know, God go before us and God fight our battle. You know, God had went before the Israelites. God said, I'm going to go before y'all, to shine his light, to follow them, to have them to follow him through that desert. So when they come to that crossroad of the Red Sea, they're panicked. So God told Moses. Moses said, don't panic. God will see us through. And God did. Moses said, the Egyptians that you see right now, you will not see them no more. Moses told them, do not be afraid, because the Egyptians that you see right now, you will not see them no more. And he meant that, because when they kept on going forward and the Egyptians kept on following behind them, God had Moses to swing that sword and close that Red Sea up for them to walk over. That God said, open that Red Sea back up. And the Egyptians all along were swept under that Red Sea. And just like Moses told them, the Egyptians that you see right now, you will not see them again. Because when they were under that Red Sea, not one of them survived. So 6, praise be to the Lord, who has not let us be torn by their teeth. So that's why we always got to give God praise. Me and anybody else that God fighting their battle. I'm still in one piece, and I thank God. I've been through so much like the Israelite, like Job, like Jesus. But you got to give God praise that you're still standing. Israel looking back at all the trials they didn't went through, didn't have so many enemies. So many enemies, so many trials. But they're giving God the praise, because it had been for God on their side, they won't be standing here today. So we got to give God the praise over our storm. Especially if you still a survivor. If you still survivor, we got to give God the praise. Because all the stuff that we don't go through, nobody don't know your pain. Nobody don't know what you done went through in your storm. To see you still looking good, to see you still standing, they just don't know. So all you can do is just give God the praise. Give God the praise in the glory. All the stuff we done went through. All the stuff that the Israelites went through. They still was standing to make history. Still from generation to generation, you still hear about the Israelites all the way up into the New Testament. They still made history. So we can still, when we still standing through our storm, Job was still standing through his storm. We have to give God the praise. We got to give God the glory. We got to give God the honor. Especially if you still standing to be a testimony to someone. We the Israelite is a lesson for us. They did mistakes. They did some good and some wrong. The Bible is a guideline. A lot of mistakes were made that we should not follow. So that's why we always supposed to read that Bible and study. It's really our guideline of living. So thanksgiving for deliverance from all the enemies. Thanksgiving from delivering from all their enemies, because they had a lot of enemies, which they could never have been delivered from if it had not been for the law that appeared for them. Therefore, all the glory belongs to God, who I will give all the praise to. You know, Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving for deliverance from their enemies. God delivering them from their enemy every time. Which they could never have been delivered from. If it had not been for the Lord. The Lord had appeared to them. And therefore all the glory belongs to God, who I will give all the praise to. So 7, we have escaped like a bird from the flowers of snare. The snare had been broken and we have escaped. Because see, the Israelites celebrate, because they done went through something. Went through from generation to generation. Then the concept went through something. They're all in Psalms right now. Psalms 124. They're saying they had escaped like a bird. David wrote this song. When David kept on running from Saul, David had said, he escaped like birds. And he also was talking about the Israelite. The Israelite is history, went on all the way to the New Testament. So oh wait, we still on 6. The teeth. Praise be the Lord who had let us be torn by their teeth. So we talk about the teeth now. The teeth of the wicked. Men are like sparrows or arrows. They're like swords and knives. But God will not give them up to either to your enemies or to Satan. So when they had sized them and got them in their mouth, see when you in the devil's mouth, God will snatch you out. God will snatch you from the devil. That's just like Job. The devil want to do so much more to Job. But when the devil want to do more to Job, because Job was still standing, that's when God had to snatch Job away. So when you that close to the devil's teeth, God will snatch you away. So when they had sized them and got them in their mouth, God had snatched them from Pharaoh and his army. See, talking about the Israelite. The Israelite were about to be swept under the Red Sea. So God saw how the Egyptian was behind the Israelite. Because sooner the Egyptian got that close to the Israelite, God had to hurry up and snatch them from Pharaoh and his whole army and put them under the Red Sea and save the Israelite. Because see, when you that close to the devil's teeth, when you that close to be in the devil's mouth, God will snatch you away. He hurried up and snatched Israel away from Pharaoh and his whole army. So now we on 7. So we have escaped like birds from the fowls of snares. The snare had been broken and we had escaped. So you're talking about when the bird is trapped in a big net. So a bird can be trapped in a big net, cannot escape. But God broke that net and allowed his people to escape like a bird. So he talking about the Israelites was like birds. Birds like were trapped in a net. Like birds are trapped in a big old net. They could not escape. They were slaves on the Pharaoh. They could not escape. But God had came along and God broke that net and allowed the Israelites to escape like birds. So the snare was broken and they have escaped. Now throughout the history of Israel, they should have been destroyed by now. But how can they be destroyed by now if they had God on their side? Throughout the history of Israel, they should have been destroyed by this time. But the hand of God has saved them every time. Who can be against you when God's hand is upon your life? You know, they had countless enemies and so many close calls, but God's love had preserved them, saved them every time. When you got God's hand upon your life, who can be against you? When you that close to the devil, God will snatch you away because you is under God's umbrella. You know, God will snatch you. God will break that snare. The Israelite was in a big net like birds. They could not escape. They were slaves, could not escape, trapped in that net. But God came along and broke that snare, and they were able to escape like birds. So with God, there is always a way out. No matter how your storm look, no matter you look like you're sinking, it look like it's impossible. No matter how you look, no matter how you look, God is always can show you a way out. God will give you a way out. Because He is the creator of the world. He is the creator of all that exists. No problem is beyond His ability to solve. No circumstances is too difficult for Him. When we think it's so difficult for us, when we think it's impossible for us, it's not impossible for God. It's not too difficult for God. You know, hey, our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So our help is in the Lord. The only one who we able to trust and flee for safety. You can't run to nobody else. You can't trust nobody else. God tell you all the time in that Bible, do not put your trust in no one. It will let you down every time. Put your trust in God who will not let you down. Because God will always keep His promise and He will see you through. No one else will not see you through. They will let you down. They will run from you. Put you on the side. God will stick by you through your whole trial. He make a promise to you. He will not break His promise. That's why He said, do not trust nobody else, but put your trust in the Lord. So we see that our help is in the Lord. The only one we can flee for safety. We can turn to the Creator for help, in our time of need. For He is on our side. He is on our side. Just like He was on the Israelite side, long as we turn towards God, He will save us every time too. God will provide a way out. And we need only to look towards Him. All Israel tribes, with God, they were able to escape like birds. They went through something. They were wandering through the wilderness. Who saved them? Who fed them? Who kept their shoes and their clothes from wearing out? It was God. So all Israel tribes, with God, they were able to escape like birds every time. God had broken the snare of the enemy. They had help from God who made heaven and earth. The creator who made heaven and earth was the one who kept on saving the Israelites, kept on breaking that snare from the enemy, and allowed them to escape like birds every time. So God is the author of all our deliverance, and He must get the glory over our stone. Let's give Him honor and praise. Let's give Him honor and praise. God is the author of all our deliverance, and He must get all the glory of our stone, our testimony. Let's give Him honor and praise. Give him honor and praise. Now, one, we see that Israel had many trials. They had many enemies, but God put the Egyptians under the Red Sea. He told them, you will not see them no more. And he meant that because he put them under the Red Sea. Not one is survived. You know, so we see, that the Israelites are always be trapped by the enemy. But we see that every time they always be that close to the enemy teeth. God always break their snare and allowed them to escape. He allowed them not to get caught up in the enemy mouth. You know, the Egyptian was right behind them. If God wouldn't have stepped in, you know, the Egyptian would have tore them up into pieces alive, like the Israelites said. They would have been tore up alive. So too, we see that if God would not been on their side, the Egyptian would have swallowed them up. If God wouldn't have had Moses to close that Red Sea up for them to walk over, the Egyptian would have tore them up in pieces. So that's why they said if God hadn't been on our side, Egyptian would have tore us up, would have tore them up alive, chewed them up with their teeth into pieces. So we see that Pharaoh had them as a slave, had them trapped in a net where they could not escape. But then God came along. God came along and he broke that snare and they were able to escape from that net. They were able to escape like birds, because they were trapped in that net. They were slaves, for 400 years. They could not move. They was trapped in that net that Pharaoh had against them, in a big old net where God had to come along and break that net. He had to break that snare for the Israelites to escape like birds. So we see that Pharaoh had them as slaves, had them trapped in a net, and they could not escape. But we see that God had broke that snare for them to escape like birds. For God helped them. God will help when you turn to Him. When you turn to Him, not no one else, you will get your help from the Lord. We have to seek Him first, and He will save you every time. We all will be escaping like birds, but we have to seek God first, for God to break that net in our stuff. Some of us have stones, that the net needs to be broken. You know, we have to keep God in our life. Look how long it took for God to break that net for the Israelites, 430 years. Just because you praying and nothing didn't happen, and you feel like you just want to give up, you feel like you want to give up on God, you feel like you just want to stop praying. I'm telling you, I'm a witness. Don't never give up. Don't never stop praying. God get quiet sometimes, but He's still working things out. Because He's a lot of time, God go before you in your storm, and God start working behind the scene. Because just because He don't break that snare right then and there, He didn't broke the Israelite snare right then and there. He waited 430 years before He came and broke that snare for them from them to escape. So don't give up so soon. God will break that net of your stone, and He will allow you to escape and be free from your stone and be happy. We will one day free from our stone. I'm still praying. I'm still praying and fasting for God to break the snare of my stone. So that's the story of the Israelite. God came and broke that snare, and they were able, God broke it, and they were able to escape like birds. God broke that snare when it was under the Pharaoh, and they escaped. But then Pharaoh came after them again. God had to break it again. And He told him, you will not see them no more. Because see, when God break that snare, and then the enemy come after you again, then He got to go to Paul too. He had Moses close that Red Sea up. Then open that Red Sea back up. You know, Moses told them, you will not see them no more. So when they kept on marching on, then they did not see the Egyptians no more because they was under that Red Sea, and not one of them survived. So that's a story of the snare had been broken for the Israelites to escape like birds, to live their life. But they kept on having enemies. But when you keep on having enemies, and after God broke that snare, that because you walking along with God. And you just have to keep on praying, and you have to keep on keeping God in your life. Because it will not get easy. Look at the look at the look at Jesus' disciples. You know, it was not easy for them. You had John head on the plow. You had Peter they kept putting Peter in jail. It was not easy because when you walk that walk with God, you got to be prepared for walk. So y'all have a blessed night, and I'll see you on the next video.